I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 181. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Chardello, coming to you on Tuesday, November 26th. And the Bobcats dropped the final home game of the season. 52-44 loss to Georgia State. Team the Bobcats were favored to beat by 21 points. They lose by 8 points. It's a tough one. Senior night. Tough to go out with a loss like that. Not what a lot of us anticipated. Not what I anticipated in the preview episode. Not what Vegas anticipated, obviously. That was a roller coaster season for the Bobcats. Up and down regular season for Texas State. Still sitting at 6-5. Postseason hopes alive for a bowl game, but it's going to be closer than we may have anticipated. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the game on Saturday. We're also going to do our preview this episode with Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday this week. We're going to do it all in one and prepare you for that Black Friday game coming up against South Alabama on the road. Another weekday game for this team. But before we get there, this episode is brought to you by First Lockhart National Bank. As the largest financial institution headquartered in Caldwell County, First Lockhart National Bank expanded to San Marcos in 2018 and opened a state-of-the-art branch on Hunter Road in 2020. For the past 6 years, FLNB has provided a wide range of financial services that have significantly improved the quality of life for the San Marcos community and beyond. Whether you need personal or business checking accounts, business loans, or home mortgages, they've got you covered. Plus, they offer innovative services like video banking, business banking, and a top-of-the-line mobile banking app. FLNB is also a huge supporter of Texas State football, standing out as one of the largest initial investors in NIL deals for Bobcats players. Be sure to follow them on X at First Lockhart and on Instagram at First Lockhart. Shout out to my guy, Gil Hodges, Senior Vice President at FLNB in MLS number 2475765, a proud Texas State grad and a diehard fan. We are thrilled to be partnering with Gil and FLNB all season long. You can find them at 2507 Hunter Road. That's 2507 Hunter Road, or give them a call at 512-504-7422. Again, that's 512-504-7422. First Lockhart National Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions may vary. Hey, Bobcat Nation. Looking for your next real estate move? McNabb & Company Real Estate Services has been proudly Bobcat owned and operated for over 15 years. They're your go-to team for buying, selling, investing, and managing properties and everything else in between. Whether you're a fan or an alum, they've got the local expertise and full-service support you need. Call them today at 512-667-9129. Again, that's 512-667-9129, or visit them at mcnabbandco.com. That's MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. McNabb & Company, where Bobcats find their home. Give them a follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X at McNabb & Co. Thank you to Monica Katz, a day one Bobcat supporter. Now she's partnering with us this season. Check them out at mcnabbandco.com. That's MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. A lot of you saw episode 180, our live episode at Zelix, brought to you by McNabb & Company. Shout out again to Monica for setting that up. What a great time that was. If you missed that episode, go check it out. We had lots of special guests, great crowd, awesome stuff. We're looking forward very much to doing that again in the future. Thanks to mcnabbandco.com, MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. All right, one more at the top for our guys at Austin Patchmaster, austin.patchmaster.com. Drywall, sheetrock, plaster repair, cracked walls, cracked ceilings, painting jobs, dings and dents, popcorn ceiling removal. Did you punch a hole in your wall after that Georgia State game on Saturday? Well, Austin Patchmaster, they can help you out. Whether you're moving in, moving out, or just looking to upgrade, they've got you covered. Owned and operated by a Tech State grad and a true Tech State sicko, Michael Clements, Austin Patchmaster was one of our first sponsors, and they are back to finish out the season. They are servicing the Austin, San Marcos area, but if you live in Houston, Dallas, they can help you out with the referral. If you still give them a call, they'll send you in the right direction. You can call them at 512-200-3888. That's 512-200-3888. And again, the website is austin.patchmaster.com. Check them out. All of your drywall repair needs, any of your home repair needs, they've got you. Hit them up again. That's austin.patchmaster.com. All right, let's get to these Bobcats. Right off the bat, volleyball. Shout out to volleyball. Sunbelt champions, 5th Sunbelt championship for this Texas State program. That's 2013, 2018, 2019, 2020, and now 2024. They are doing the NCAA tournament selection show on December 1st. So we'll find out where they go next. They're going to be playing in that tournament a little later in December like 6th, 7th, around then is where that tournament starts. So that's exciting. We'll do more on volleyball. The football season, it ends after this week. We'll have something special for volleyball next week, especially after we find out where they're going to be playing, how far away it is. If it's not that far, hey, maybe I can travel there. We'll see where it all ends up. But shout out to volleyball. Shout out to Sean Hewitt for maintaining what Karen Chisholm started with this program, this consistent winning every single year, even though it's been since 2020 since they won it. They've been in the mix in those years in between, and they've got it again. I mean, what a program at this university. Probably the finest athletics program at this university is volleyball. They deserve more eyes on them, and I'm mainly guilty of that. Need to talk about volleyball more, but meaning to talk more about some of these other sports. Been very focused on football as we grow this podcast, and also as I've been growing my family. If I'm being honest, it's been harder to get to some of these other games. But that is definitely something the Wizard and I, Zachary Webb, have been talking about, is covering more of these other sports outside of football. And there's none more that deserve it than volleyball. Shout out again to volleyball, Sunbelt champions. Way to keep the standard. Let's jump to football, though. Let's get to it because we have a lot this episode, a lot to go over with this game, with the game coming up this week, a little bit of talking about this season. We'll do a full dissecting of the season once it's over, but we'll talk a little bit about it because 11 games into it, it's been really hard to put your finger on this team. Very, very up and down, the highest of highs you could experience, 49-10 over UTSA, the 58-3 win on homecoming, and then the lowest of lows with like the Sam Houston game with the loss to Georgia State on senior night. It's been very up and down with this team. The highs are a lot of fun, and the lows are real low and real frustrating after some of these performances that you feel they should win. They should really handle the other opponent, and it doesn't end up that way. But let's go through it. Let's talk about this Georgia State game real fast. I'm sure all of you are dying for me to go through the scoring of this game. You're all itching to talk about it and go through those scores. So obviously I'm joking, but we'll go through it pretty quick because it was that first half. It was very back and forth before Georgia State started to pull away, and then Texas State started to pull their way back in a little too late. But we'll go through it. Georgia State, they got the ball rolling. First quarter, they got a touchdown. Michael Dukes, 23-yard run. Obviously, what we've seen from this Texas State team is they like to jump ahead. Obviously, every team would, but this team, it seems like that's what they need to do. They need to get ahead. They haven't been too good at climbing back into these games. We saw it from GJ Kinney teams last season. Like when you think back to ULM, you think back to some of these games that they were able to get back in. It just hasn't really happened for them this year. Then right after that, Bobcats responded with 2 touchdowns. Torrance Burgess, 18-yard touchdown, second touchdown of the season after that really long one the week before. I think it was 57 yards for him. Then we saw Chris Don Jr., a terrific game from him. He got his first score in probably 2 months, it feels like. It's been a while, and he had 3 of them this game. Texas State, they go up 14-7 halfway through the first quarter. Georgia State, they tie it up before the end of the first quarter, though. Freddie Brock touchdown, his first of 3 touchdowns on the ground for Freddie Brock. Chris Don Jr. does it again in the second quarter, regain the lead for Texas State, 21-14, 6-yard touchdown catch. Another one from Jordan McLeod. That was the one where he tied the Texas State record for touchdown passes in a season. Jordan McLeod did right there at 26. He wasn't done, though, got a few more, firmly secured that record. But right after that, when 21-14, seems like it's going to be back and forth, nice little heavyweight fight. And then Georgia State really starts to pull away with it here with 3 consecutive touchdown passes by Dorian Fleming from Christian Velou, who's from France. Almost in France. He's from Canada. maybe he's French Canadian. I don't know, but he's from Canada, which was you don't hear a lot of Canadian quarterbacks out there. In Texas State, they got tuned up by a Canadian quarterback. He had he ended that second quarter on a run, a 30-yard touchdown pass to Fleming, a 21-yard touchdown pass to Fleming, and then with a minute 14 left, an 11-yard touchdown pass to Fleming. And just for good measure, they went ahead and added a field goal. So then they went into halftime up 38-21. It was that fast. It was an avalanche. That first touchdown that I said by Fleming was with 8:40 left in the second quarter, and that tied it at 21. And then in the next 8 minutes and 40 seconds, it ended up being 38-21 by halftime. And then halftime ended. They came out. It was a bit of a struggle, both sides, in that third quarter before another Freddie Brock touchdown, 57-yard touchdown. And at this point, it's 45-21. In my mind, that it's over. The Bobcats are able to crawl back into it somewhat in the fourth quarter, but 45-21, we're fourth quarter's coming up. Haven't seen this team come from behind much at all season. Didn't anticipate them to come back down 24, but they did fight. They did fight, specifically Bo Sparks. 80-yard punt return for a touchdown. It was one of two 80-yard punt returns he had in the game. He had one a little bit later that set up a touchdown later in the quarter. An 80-yard punt return that didn't go for a touchdown for Bo Sparks. He had 200 yards in punt returns because then he had another 41-yard punt return. I'm pretty sure Texas State found their punt returner for the foreseeable future in Bo Sparks. He looked pretty terrific returning it. It's good stuff. Go check out the Zelix live episode I was telling you about on 180. We got to talk to him. I didn't talk to him about returning punts because it was the first time we'd seen him do it. We'd seen Joey Hobart, who was hurt, wasn't playing in this game. So it ended up being Bo Sparks, a little bit of Cole Wilson. We've seen him return some punts during the season. Freddie Brock, he finds a touchdown and finds the end zone again, makes it 52-29, 10 minutes left in the game. It was his third touchdown in the game. Georgia State had two different players, scored 3 touchdowns. Fleming had the 3 touchdown catches. Brock had the 3 touchdown runs. But Bobcats get back into it. Another touchdown pass to Chris Don, and then a 2-point conversion. That makes it 52-36. The punt return I mentioned that didn't go for a touchdown, that went for 80 yards by Bo Sparks, ended in a 3-yard touchdown run for Lincoln Perry. Another touchdown run for Perry. That was good stuff. But 2-point conversion made it 52-44, too little, too late, 2:52 left in that game. And they were able to get a first down. There's a roughing the passer penalty on a third down. It was pretty brutal for Texas State that basically ended it, cemented the game. They were able to run the clock out from there. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to watch, especially that avalanche right before halftime. It felt so much like that Arkansas State game last season, where I feel like it was an 8-minute stretch in that one where we saw like a couple defensive touchdowns, a special teams touchdown. It was just a ton of points all of a sudden on this Texas State team, an insurmountable amount of points. How it gets there is beyond me. How it got to that point, especially after you see this defense allow just 3 points from Southern Miss last week to allow so much more from an offense that seemed to be on the downside this season. That's the best game they've had all season offensively, and it was against what was supposed to be a pretty tough Texas State defense. We could go through stats. Really the one stat that I want to take away, I talked about it already with Bo Sparks in the punt return. Jordan McLeod getting the 28th touchdown on the season, 28 touchdown passes. That passes Bradley George from 2008 for the single season record for passing touchdowns at Texas State. That's nothing to gloss over. I feel like he's still, with a game left, he could get over 30, which hasn't been done at Texas State before. Even with missing basically 2 games, he missed, when it was ULM, when it was rainy weather, and they decided to go with Brad Jackson, so not to hurt him further with that ankle. And then halfway through that Louisiana game, he left. He's still able to put up these stats. So it's pretty great stuff from Jordan McLeod this season. It hasn't been perfect. There's definitely, times where the ball isn't right where it should be, but I do really appreciate his accuracy. I appreciate his decision making. They've really started to find that deep ball recently, especially with Cole Wilson, gotten on some good chemistry there. I thought he put together a really respectable season. One and done for him, obviously. He was part of the senior day ceremonies that they had. And we'll go through that. We'll go through the seniors, who's going to be back. Because I was surprised by players that weren't listed there. And we'll go with that. Players that will be back next season in 2025, seemingly with GJ Kinney. I don't know how we've gotten this far, and we haven't talked about the contract extension. You know, we threw a little video in shorts on our YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube. Go check that one out. We talked a little bit about it, but I'll go through that a little bit more as well. I didn't even make notes about it, looking at my notes right here. But yeah, there's some players that I half anticipated them to be in the senior day celebration that would be back, seemingly back in 2025 if they don't enter the transfer portal. With this contract extension for GJ Kinney, makes it more likely that these guys stay. And I really appreciate the stuff from GJ Kinney in his press conference on Tuesday. It's Tuesday right now, kind of fresh off the press conference, where he's talking a lot about next year and how excited he is to stay at Texas State. I'll dive into that a little bit more once we get through some of this other stuff. But in the game, really, it was 4 turnovers for Texas State. That's been a big issue all season for this Texas State team. That leaves them at they have 7 more turnovers. They're -7 in the turnover margin. 7 more turnovers than they've gotten on defense. Let's see, that's 11 interceptions and 8 fumbles on offense to 5 interceptions and 7 fumbles recovered. That's 110th in the nation, the -7 mark in turnover margin. So we saw a little bit of it last year with GJ Kinney's this team last season when they were -2. Wasn't as bad. It's a little closer to even on that turnover margin, but now being at -7 with 1 game left, that is an issue that they need to address, that needs to be cleaned up. I think that one, the 2 biggest takeaways for me from not necessarily that game, but the season, because I would say they did pretty well in the red zone. I mean, I don't know. There were times they got to the goal line and didn't get it. Now that I'm thinking on it, but it's red zone and turnovers, and I think they almost go hand in hand, because you see some of the turnovers in the red zone. Because even in the red zone, they're 35 for 42 scoring in the red zone this year. So 42 times they've been in the red zone on offense, and they've scored 35 times. Now you're probably thinking, oh, that's only 7 times that they hadn't scored. That's not that many. Well, it's 29 field goals as well. So that's 6 other opportunities where they're down there and they don't get a touchdown. And that doesn't seem like a ton if you're thinking about it in a percentages. But if you look at it compared to the rest of the nation, 134 teams nationally, I just said 110 in turnover margin for this team out of 134 teams. They're 80th in red zone offense at that mark. So figuring out what goes wrong in the red zone, mainly specifically, I didn't dive this far into stats. Maybe I will when the season ends, and we'll get a little more detailed, a little more analytical, but figuring out what down specifically things go wrong, not necessarily in the red zone, but leading up to it, because they're not terrible on 3rd down. They're top half in the country on 3rd down, but it's something to think about. Is it 1st down, 2nd down? What is going wrong in these certain areas? When do you turn the ball over more? What down is it more likely for the turnovers to occur, and just sharpening that? It's just stuff to look at for the offseason that I feel like really went into the inconsistency of this team this year. Because you look at it, obviously you can't base everything on stats. You got to watch the games, but you try to look at stats to get a good idea of where this team is and what's going on, what's going wrong specifically. And you look at them offensively and defensively compared to the rest of the Sun Belt teams, and they're near the top in both offense and defense. I mean, I have it here. I'm sure they're number 1 in scoring offense and in total offense, 36.4 points per game and 469.3 total yards per game. On defense, they're number 3 scoring defense and number 3 total defense, 23 points allowed per game and 345 total yards allowed per game. So they're near the top right there. But these turnovers, because even when the turnover margin, it's when you talk about it on surface, like, okay, yeah, that's the offense's fault, but it's also the defense isn't getting those turnovers. They're not closing the gap of that margin by being opportunistic. 5 interceptions on the season is not a lot. It's not a lot of interceptions. So there's a lot of emphasis on pass rush with this defense. Not as much blitzing this year as we saw last year. But I think that there's something that needs to be considered in that area, because the staff's going to be back next year. Hopefully, the entire staff, because I know there's times we can be critical. I say me. I'm on my podcast. I can be critical, but this is not a situation where I feel anybody on this staff should be fired, should be let go. I think there's obviously areas they need to get better at, and I think that's stuff that they know. I mean, they've been favored in every game this year, even going into this game this week against South Alabama. They're favored again. As of right now on Tuesday, they're favored by 1 point to beat South Alabama. So that's 12 for 12 games they are favored, but they're 6-5 despite being favored in these games. They're even favored against Arizona State, if you go back and remember, 2.5 points. Looking at Arizona State, they're about to win the Big 12 and everything. What a great game that was. I wish I appreciated it more in the moment and didn't think more about, oh man, how it ended with that, with the interception and then the turnover on downs with like 2 minutes left, where it came down to the last 5 minutes. But it's hard not to just think about that loss. But that was a really good game. And this was a Texas State team that really played up to its opponent. It played up to this P4 program that could potentially win the Big 12. And seems that was the story of it all year. They'd play up to these opponents. When we wouldn't expect them to hang in there, they hung in there more. And when we expected them to really run away with it, they don't, like last week. It's very, very up and down, that inconsistency. Like on field, I think it's a lot of the turnovers in the red zone, that type of stuff. If they can clean that up, that'll help with the consistency, because then you're not trotting the defense out when they're not ready to go on some of these turnovers, and you're getting more points. Because when we're talking about this team, 5 losses, 4 of those losses are by a score. And that 5th one was by 10 points. So, I mean, some of these red zone trips that they ended up short on, 35 for 42, you get a few more of those in some of those games that they lost. And that turns things. It matters. It's the little things. And that's the thing, is this program is so much better than it was, that it's like, how can you really be mad at it? It's improved significantly from where it was just in 2 years ago in 2022 to where it is right now in 2024. But it's good enough to be good enough. But to be great, they got to clean up some of these other stuff, and they will, and they'll get there. There's a lot of the stuff that it's going to take the offseason. You can't do it now, especially on a short week, 6 games going from the last game to the next game. They're not going to fix it up. Maybe some of the stuff they can clean up before a bowl game. But I think a lot of this, it goes into the offseason. This is stuff that you address and you fix before the season starts. But stuff that is very much, it can be addressed. It can be cleaned up with scheme, with the specific plays you call on these downs, where you're not having as much success, or in the areas of the field like the red zone. Because this team, I have total faith in them scoring a 50-yard touchdown once they get in the red zone, when they need to get, and they only need a certain amount of yards, and it shortens the field a little bit, gets a little more difficult. And I know I pound the table for tight ends, and I'm disappointed. Connor Fox is a senior. I think he's a really terrific tight end, and him, I think, to be totally frank, I feel like he was underutilized, and maybe in these red zone situations where you could have used him doing something different than what got you into the red zone, because you use the big splashes to get you into the red zone. Once you're there, what do? The run game inside the tackles hasn't been there quite like it was last season. And that's when you really need it. And whether that's blocking, whether it's scheme, whether it's personnel, like I like what they do sometimes when they'll put a tight end in the backfield, little halfback spot, little somewhat of a fullback type of situation. Maybe coming up with some sort of packages specifically for that, just for the red zone, where you've yet to see them go under center at all. Doesn't seem like that's anything they do. I know that's somewhat of a foreign concept in today's football, but really does streamline the process. It cuts down on bad snaps. It makes it so the quarterback, he has the ball, he turns, he hands it off. It's just, things can be a little cleaner if you can practice that and get it down. figuring out some of that red zone packaging. Because even that style of offense cuts down, in theory, cuts down on turnovers on these fumbles, 8 fumbles on the season. I just, there's a lot to consider for the offseason for this team. For it to be so up and down, because we see statistically near the top of the Sun Belt, but it just hasn't yielded those results in the wins and losses. So it has to do, when you have the talent, you have the players, it comes down to scheme and being prepared and how exactly they are prepared. I will say that I've said it before, and I don't mean to be a broken record if I'm saying it again. These coaches, they have a lot of growing to do, but I want them to grow here. And that's why it's great that GJ Kinney got that contract extension. If you haven't heard by now, I'm sure you've heard because it was last week. $14 million deal, 7 years, going until 2031. It's $2 million a year for GJ Kinney. That makes him the highest paid coach in the Sun Belt now. But he was just about tied for it before. Now he's the highest paid coach in the Sun Belt. And I think it's a smart move for Texas State. It's hard right after a loss to be like, oh, okay, they just lost. Is it really? Is this? I saw some people saying, is this what you get for $2 million and things like that? Yeah, it may, and I'll put this point out there as well. That may have been somewhat of a distracting time to announce that, but it may have also been strategic, because we see what's going on with Tulsa. We see some of these other programs letting go of their coaches, so they want to secure their guy before it happens. I'm sure it wasn't meant as a distraction, but they had to lock it in before a lot of the coaching search happens. So I understand that aspect of it, and I think it's smart to lock in this coach. I think it's one of the smartest things this administration has done is go ahead and just outkick the coverage, offer something higher than probably other programs will. Although Tulsa, where GJ Kinney graduated from, we saw that job opening up. They pay a similar amount. So I feel like that takes him out of the running, potentially even takes him out of the running for, say, like an NFL coordinator job, an OC job there, like $2 million. I imagine that pays more than some of those positions. It keeps him at Texas State, barring some outrageous offer that you can't compete with. And now that he's locked in at Texas State, if he were to leave, there's a buyout. It was 75% of the last deal. Once we catch the specs on the new contract, imagine it's the same amount. So if he does leave, that's a windfall of cash coming Texas State's way. So smart move all around. I know coming off a loss, it's a little less palatable for some people out there, but it was still a smart move to make sure that GJ Kinney's in maroon and gold in 2025. And he will be. And I've liked hearing him talk ever since the contract extension. Even before it, he had great things to say about San Marcos. It's one of the few coaches I know, at least in my time, where they live in San Marcos. A lot of times live in New Braunfels. They live in Austin. I know he's living in San Marcos, so I know he cares a lot about this community. I guess we should get on the preview. I do, before we get to the preview, I want to talk about the seniors. Just really fast. Let's go through the seniors. Cannon Webb, Drew Donnelly, John Orlean, long snapper John Orlean, Justin Harris, Kenny Haynes, Michael Boudin III, James Neal, Deion Hankins, Chase Todd, Chris Mills, Tavian Coleman, Connor Fox, Jordan Polk, Jaden Williams, Terry Webb, Bryce Bass, Caleb Kolk, Jordan McLeod, Joey Hobart, Nash Jones, Tori Spears. Those are your seniors that were celebrated on Senior Day for Texas State. Some names that have been here for a while: Tori Spears, Kenny Haynes, some guys who just got here like Deion Hankins, Jordan Polk, and of course Jordan McLeod. But what a group of seniors that are on their way out for this team. We've seen a lot of them, specifically Nash Jones, Joey Hobart, these guys that were a part of that team last season, and really the turnaround in this place. Even talking with Nash Jones today on Tuesday, I did mention they weren't made available on Saturday. Really wish that didn't happen. We hadn't had players at the press conferences after the games, the last few games. I know it's not even for me. It's the last time these guys get to stand up and talk about this place, talk about playing that stadium, record-setting crowds, everything like that. And the guys who are going to move on to the next level, the Jordan McLeod, Joey Hobart, Nash Jones, these players that are undoubtedly going to play at the next level, NFL, UFL, whatever it may be. This is media training for them in those situations to talk to the media after a tough loss. So, when I gripe about that, that's the importance of it. Doesn't matter quotes for an article. It's for fans to be able to hear from these guys. It's for these guys to be able to talk about their time here and everything like that. But we did get to talk to seniors on Tuesday, which was nice. They made up for it. Nash Jones, Jordan McLeod, and Nash Jones talking about how as a Christian man, when he leaves the place, he wants to leave a foundation like he was able to do at Incarnate Word and what he hopes he was able to do at Texas State. I thought that was some real powerful stuff. So go listen to some of those. They'll be on the Texas State website for those press conferences. But it was, we saw 28 of them listed. There were some players that weren't listed that I was like, they might, who knows what the situation is. Ish Mahdi is one that it seems like he's going to be back, barring, I should say, in that, the transfer portal era, barring a transfer portal. He's going to be back at Texas State. Lincoln Perry, Torrance Burgess, Stephen Parker. Didn't see him on that list as well. He was supposed to be a senior. Imagine maybe a medical red shirt, something going on there. Ben Bell, didn't see him on there, even though he's technically not sure what's up with that. Although Thad Watkins did say in his spaces recently, 75% chance he comes back next year. I like those odds. Shout out to Thad for dropping that nugget. Hopefully that holds true. Cole Wilson, Dorian Strawn, Talik Lockett, some good pieces from this offensive line. We'll be back. Josh Eaton, Trez Moore, AJ Edwards, who we hadn't seen, injured quite a bit this season, so we hadn't really seen him at that nickel position on defense. So some really good players that if they're able to hang on to them and keep them in San Marcos, they should be able to do some great things for Texas State next year. Let's do a quick South Alabama preview. Texas State taking on South Alabama, Friday game. As we talked about, Bobcats are favored by 1 point in this one. Over under set at 60.5. Should be a fun game. Two fun offenses. South Alabama's Sunbelt stats real fast. Number 3 scoring offense at 34.5 points, and the number 3 total offense at 439 yards per game. Then it seems like they can go up against this Texas State offense. 6th passing defense, 3rd rushing defense, number 4 scoring defense. Oh, I'm sorry, this is 6th passing offense and 3rd rushing offense. Number 4 scoring defense and number 6 total defense. They're number 2 in rush defense. They have a pretty salty D line, but number 13 in passing defense. For Texas State, it's the 4th weekday game this year, 1 and 2 on these weekday games. We saw them play on 2 different Thursdays and a Tuesday. This will be their first Friday one this week. It's kind of a must win for both teams because bowl eligibility is not fully guaranteed for anybody. Right now, there's 82 spots, 82 bowl spots. 77 teams are currently eligible. But there are 14 5-win teams that could get a win and become bowl eligible. So it could be as high as 91 teams for 82 spots. Now we saw 2014, nothing is guaranteed. Texas State this has happened before where they have been bowl eligible and didn't get a bowl game. I will say with attendance and a lot of other factors that are into it, Texas State doesn't seem like one of the teams that would be left out if there was a surplus in these 6-win teams. But maybe go ahead and get that 7th win just to be safe, South Alabama is 4-1 in its last 5 games, getting hot at the right time. It seems this is an offense that scored the most points by a Sun Belt offense all season, 87 against Northwestern in non-conference play. So they can definitely do it. This team can definitely go. But this is one of the 2 losses I had when I did fall camp, when I did a season prediction, 10-2. It's laughable now. That's why I'm laughing at it. Although it's really not. It's really not. This team, it's nice to be at 500, potentially above 500 at the end of the regular season, but this is a team that did, for all intents and purposes, they underachieved this season. I mean, the predicted to win the Sun Belt West Division and lots of other factors. It's a very talented team, and just there was times it was up and down. Just couldn't put it together for the full season. We saw it in patterns: 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off. Now we're 1 off, but we'll see if they can end it on that high note. But this was when I predicted 10-2 in fall camp. This was one of the losses I had. I will say the other loss was to Troy, and they won that game. So good for the Bobcats there. So that's why we'll flip it here. We'll flip it for this one. I've been pretty much wrong all season here as far as my preseason prediction, but I have a little better luck going into the game. But I'm going to say Texas State 38, South Alabama 36, a close game. I haven't really seen the Bobcats win a close game yet. It's been they either win big or they lose close. And they need to get that close win. I think this is the week that we see it. Ended on a strong note, go into bowl season, a 7-win team for Texas State. That's what I'm predicting for this Texas State squad. But that'll do it. We'll keep it a quick episode. I stuffed a lot of information in that 30 minutes. Hopefully you got it all there. Sorry if my voice isn't crystal clear. It feels a little extra raspy today. But it's that holiday season. We're getting there. It's finally starting to get cold and everything. We'll have lots more content after this. Even with this game, I'll be able to do a recap of it pretty quickly, and we'll have plenty of content leading into a bowl game. We'll have plenty of content about some other sports as well. Basketball is cooking. We just saw them do decently in that tournament. Ended it with a nice win over Ohio. But we'll get into lots of the other sports after Thanksgiving. But this episode was brought to you by TGC LLC, the GalindoCollective.com. That's GALINDO, GalindoCollective.com, a team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter at TGC_LLC and on Instagram and Facebook, The Galindo Collective. Shout out to my guy, Rick Galindo. He got us all season long. We were doing the TGC ticket giveaway. I was very much enjoyed seeing everybody take those pictures when you'd go sit in those seats. Thank you so much to Rick Galindo for not just helping us with that, for getting us to Media Day over summer, getting us through the whole season, getting us through last season. Big shout out to the Galindo Collective. Check them out again. That's the GalindoCollective.com, GALINDO, GalindoCollective.com. All right, one more for our guys at Chilsey. Oh, we were handing out koozies brought to you by Chilsey at the live episode, CHILLZEY.com. You can get custom tumblers like this bad boy I'm holding up right here. You can see the Mad Cat logo on there. You can put any logo you want. And if you punch in Bobcats at your checkout and you order 6 or more of these, they're only $15 a piece, which is a great price for those tumblers. They've also got custom koozies. I'm down to the black ones now. I've been handing out too many of them. They've got custom koozies. You can see this Mad Cat one on there. You can get any logo you want on there and they'll make it up and send it to you. If you catch us, we'll start bringing them to some other games, some of these, some basketball games and everything. Come find us. We'll hand you some koozies brought to you by Chilsey.com, CHILLZEY.com. Oh, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/WinNowOrGetBent. Check out our merch site, WNOGB.com. Wearing the Sicko sweater. It's finally cold enough for it. Been missing the Sicko sweater. Got it on. If you're watching on YouTube, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. You can see me holding up the Sicko sweater. Follow us on Twitter at Win Now or Get Bent. Follow us on Instagram at WNOGB. Like, subscribe, comment on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify, for you audio heads. Get in there and let them know that you're listening to us. Thank you so much to First Lockhart National Bank, McNabb, TGC LLC, Austin Patchmaster, and Chilsey. Thank you to the Wizard, Zachary Webb, our great producer, always making this podcast look great. And thank you to you sickos for hanging in there all regular season. What a roller coaster of a season. Let's see if we can stabilize a little bit more in 2025. But you know what? End it on a strong note. Get to that bowl game. Back-to-back seasons being bowl eligible for the Bobcats. Hopefully in a bowl with a bowl invite at the end of the regular season. It's come a long way after 10 years of not being able to get to this point to do it in back-to-back seasons. It's nothing to shake a stick at. I know it can be negative sometimes when we're analyzing this team, and it may not have been as great as we wanted it to be, but it's still they have made this football program respectable, and it is way more enjoyable to cover and talk about and to be a fan of this program as respectable as it is. The standard is higher now, so everyone else's standards are going to be raised, and you're going to catch more flack for certain things. But you guys stay salty out there and keep raising that standard. Shout out again to you sickos. I'd be shouting into the void without you. So thank you so much for being here all regular season. Looking forward for more great stuff this off season. All right, everybody, win now or get bent.